Good to see all of you. So today is Labor Day, and I wanted to do two things. One of them is recommend a really wonderful article, The History of Labor Day and the Jewish Involvement in the Trade Unions. And it is interesting, it is informative, and it's a reminder that there are certain things that might sound inconsequential to modern ears, but were actually revolutionary, and Jews were part of creating this revolution, which we would call workers' rights in the United States. Our involvement was not obvious, nor was it immediate, but there were roles that we played, largely the Ashkenazi waves of immigrants in New York, but not only in New York, were involved in creating unions, especially in the aftermath of disasters, including the Shirtwaist Factory fire, which led to the deaths of countless workers, all based on the cruelty of unregulated industry. So one of those industries was the Shirtwaist Factory, was the fabric and garment industry, but there were cigar makers and knee pants workers and cap workers, and even the Yiddish actors created a union. But it wasn't always so. And there are certain small things that were not small at all, but they seemed small. One of them was ventilated floors. One of them was an 8-hour workday. There are countless things that are recognized by Labor Day, which of course so many of us take for granted. We don't think about these things as revolutionary because they were accomplished and established more than 100 years ago. And yet all of the work it takes today to make sure that employees are treated fairly, with decency. In some industries that is taken for granted and employees can organize. But we see headlines not poking at Starbucks, but as one of the places where unions have not happened. And when they do, industry fights it. I understand what the tension is. When unions arise, workers can demand better pay, better facilities, better circumstances, and employers don't want to spend more money. That is the natural tension in a capitalist society, but it also shows the underbelly of a capitalist society. Because if it's understandable that the big business or business owners or small business owners can't afford or don't want to pay more money for their workers, first of all, that's a deficiency when it comes to ethics. But it's understandable when it comes to business, and that tells us the limits of capitalism. It tells us that the Jewish recognition that there needs to be an obligatory system that binds all of us together, that teaches us from the smallest action to the largest action, that everything has consequences. This week's Parsha actually has the best example of that in the entire Torah. In this week's Parsha, Ki Teitzei, there is a small action, which a lot of us would not understand and maybe still don't, but I want to use it to illustrate a point. There is the teaching, I'm just going to read the translation here. If walking along the road you chance upon a bird's nest, and the mother is sitting over the fledglings or on the eggs, do not take the mother together with her young. Let the mother go, and take only the young, in order that you may fare well and have a long life. This in Hebrew is called Shiloach HaKen, the mitzvah, the commandment of sending the mother bird away. There is no explanation given in the Torah. Some commentators have suggested that it's because you show compassion, the mother shouldn't see you collecting the eggs. All of that makes sense, but the Torah doesn't say so. What the Torah says is, do this thing, and you'll live a long life. It's interesting. Another mitzvah for which you earn a long life as a promise from the Torah, which of course is very problematic. We know life is not that simple. You do the right thing, you live a long and good life. No promises are that easy to keep. The other one is honoring your parents. How can you compare, commentators in the Talmud suggest, the heaviness of honoring your parents, which is an everyday thing, the most demanding of things? Really, it's very heavy. Kabed et avicha v'et imecha is the Hebrew for honor your parents. Kabed, honor, is the same word as kaved, heavy. It's the heaviest mitzvah. You compare that with sending the mother bird away when you collect the eggs from a nest. It teaches us that the most inconsequential of actions has very, very deep implications. Not only is no action neutral, as we know, but sometimes the smallest actions can have the biggest of results. The decision of laborers in the late 1800s to march, each one of those steps that they took, seen on its own, was very small. But thousands of cloak workers showed up. Thousands of Jews marched with the Hebrew trade unions to join with the larger unions. And it's only with the leadership of the Jewish community that some of these great revolutions in American society happened. And it is only with our involvement as the Jewish community that more good things, more necessary things that separated might seem small, but in aggregate have huge dimensions. Only through those necessary changes and facets of American society will we lead a long life. And will people who are dependent upon us, if we have gotten to the position of having employees ourselves. Unions guarantee, all in theory, but it's a good theory, guarantee that human dignity will be part of the experience of someone who works. I remember in the early days of these broadcasts, I share this often, but it really does come to mind in all of these ways. I was broadcasting from another room in my home, and the window was open, often because it just felt good to get some air. And there were noises from outside, and one of those noises that frequently happened was a garbage truck. The sanitation workers. Did I ever notice them, their work? Did I ever, until the pandemic actually, really appreciate what it was that they did? The answer is yes. I remember being in Israel when the sanitation workers went on strike because they weren't being treated fairly. It is only through collective action that people who could otherwise be ignored can raise their voices. The truth is that's what a democracy is too. But even within a democracy, there are those who are less visible. We have been part, the Jewish community, and certainly Jewish values, have always been part of seeing that what could seem inconsequential is actually cosmic in its import. So I want to bless us to pay attention to the small things in life and to see that each one of them is not actually very small, and to recognize that no human being should be in that category. Labor Day in the United States is a recognition and should be in our consciousness. It's a recognition that it wasn't always appropriate and oftentimes is still not the dignity that our workers deserve. We should celebrate those who labor with their bodies, who labor with their voices, who labor to make this world work, to honor them more than one day a year, but certainly this day. So friends, bless all of you. Thank you for sharing some of your family stories. I certainly have my own. Can't wait to see you tomorrow when we learn again. Bless you, friends. See you tomorrow. Have a good day.